New Wave Community Media.
It's just J-Mike.
Hello, my darlings. Welcome to a new episode of GMP, aka Generation Mixed Podcast with your host, Jolie. Today's amazing guest is Rachael Go, a podcast host from the Mixed Movement podcast, which also discusses mixed race stories, issues, and lives with her two mixed race siblings. Rachael, my darling, merci beaucoup for coming on the show. I want you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself before we dive in, honey.
Well, first, I want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to be on your incredible show. I am honored and I'm really excited to be here. I am really firm and I find a lot of importance on connection and community. And I think it's really important for us to network within the mixed race space. So thank you for having me here.
I love it. So we start from the very beginning with baby Rachael. But before we start with baby Rachael, I'm going to ask about your wonderful parents, because I asked this of all of my guests about, who come from mixed race and their parents and stuff. How did your parents meet is my question.
Okay. So my story, I'm laughing because it's a little bit, I guess, taboo. And I first want to just say that I'm really, really proud of my parents and everything that how honest they were throughout everything with me. My parents all were high school friends.
Okay.
And I say all because I actually am the result of an affair.
Okay.
And my mom was married to my sister's dad, and who are both monoracial white people. And my biological father was friends with them in high school, and he was actually an artist. He was in a band. I don't know the exact scenario, but that is how I came to be. Both my mother and my biological father stepped outside of their marriages, had an affair, and surprise, that's me. Even though it's kind of funny, I am learning that they knew the truth about me before I was born. That was actually something that I recently discovered within the last 5 years of my life. So everybody's story is unique. This one's a little interesting, but honestly, I am so dang proud of my family for being as open and honest about my coming to be as they have been. So I was raised by my mother and my sister's father.
Okay.
He essentially adopted me. There was no official signing of any adoption papers, but he signed my birth certificate. I was named after him. He walked me down the aisle when I got married. He's my dad. And my biological father, he was in my life as much as he could be. I understand. I actually don't understand how tricky it was back in the 80s and 90s with these family dynamics, but I did know of my biological father. I had met him and his wife and my half siblings very sporadically throughout my life. Mm-hmm. So I knew them, but not very well. And then I was raised by my mom primarily.
Okay. So with your mother and your adopted father, so they're both white, correct?
Yes.
So now how was it for you growing up from baby Rachael to child Rachael? You're going to school and, you have two white parents. I'm sure you got questions and stares, and everything. So tell us a little bit about that.
All of it. Oh, my goodness. I like to call it when the world happened to me. Within my own family, within my own home, I was happy and comfortable. And I had my mom, my dad, my older sister. Everything was great. My dog, everything was wonderful. And even when my mom and my dad went through divorce when I was, I think, about 3, everything was fine.
Okay.
I think my very first vivid memory was my mom actually telling my sister and I, we were in the basement and she sat us down. She was doing laundry. We were playing in, I don't know, cardboard box, who knows? And she got very somber and she put us, I think I was sitting in like a windowsill.
Okay.
She got very serious and she told me and my sister, I want you to know that you guys have different bodies. And I didn't know what that meant. So I was looking at my sister and I was like, what guidance? And she was like, she contemplated and she asked my mom, did that mean that we're still sisters? Mm-hmm. And she said, yes, and I will always be your mommy. And that was that. And then so I knew, I've always known the truth. Mm-hmm. But then I got to school. Mm-hmm. And one of the first pivotal memories for me in school was when my adopted dad, my sister's dad, he's a retired firefighter paramedic, and he came in to teach DARE, you know, it was the coolest thing ever. It was my dad. He's a hero. He's up in the class, you know, in front. Everyone's like, oh, a firefighter, you know, and then he, you know, at the end of it, he's walking out of the classroom and he goes, hey, kiddo, and he like pats me on the top of the head, and I'm like, just beaming. And I watch him walk out the door and I turn to my classmates and I've got people staring at me. So many questions. That's not your dad. You don't, wait, we know your mom. We know your sister. That's not your dad. Why are you brown? So lunchtime, that lunchtime was really hard. I'm pretty sure I feel like I got up at lunch because I had a bunch of questions to answer from my classmates, and I cried in the bathroom. And it was hard. And that was pretty much the beginning of what I had to experience throughout my school career, was just answering people's questions. I got really good at drawing out a family tree, which was unnecessary, and then it just was something that grew on me and it became normal. I hated it, but I just felt like I had to explain to so many people why I didn't look like my sister. No, I'm not adopted. Yes, that's my mom. Yes, that's my dad. So it was really when the world happened to me.
That's a good way of looking at it. That's a good way of explaining it. So getting into high school, though, I mean, now, you know, games people play even worse in high school. You know, you have the cliques, the mean girls, and all that other stuff.
Oh, yes.
Well, let me ask you this. Where you grew up, was it primarily white people? Was it a diverse community or what?
Primarily white, fairly diverse. I felt like there was a pretty good mix, but we just didn't integrate.
Got it.
Or super easy. So yeah, very cliquey. Kind of a classic high school.
In high school, I'm sure. Was it the same for you in high school, or was it a little bit harder for you, or was it, you know, the same?
Yeah, my entire teenage years seemed to be a bit of a struggle. Primarily because I didn't have anybody to talk to.
Okay.
So there was a lot that I bottled up and I didn't talk about. I was kind of unraveling with my own identity at home and at school. I kind of tried every group, to be honest with you. I mean, I went through the goth phase and like dabbled with gangs. And then in my junior year and senior year, I fell in love with a form of art, a form of home ec, fashion design. Oh. And that was everything to me. I found a way to express myself through my clothing, through my makeup, through my hair. I just kind of dove into sewing, and that is where I focused. But that being said, it was really interesting. My junior and senior year in high school, I felt like a ghost. I called myself a ghost. I'm like, everybody knows me. I know nobody. It was really interesting. It was very isolating. Mm-hmm. I was struggling a lot with my mental health. I was it was not a delightful time for me, but I think all of those questions for my entire life at that point of who are you, explain yourself within your own family. I think it was just finally piling up on me, and I couldn't talk. I had nobody to talk to.
So you found refuge in fashion design and things like that.
Yeah.
So then what about college? I mean, was college any better, any different, or?
I did one semester of college, needed a break, then went to trade school. Okay. I think I didn't want to. It's so funny. I've now applied twice to fashion design school and been accepted and backed away. It's really kind of funny. But I think I just needed a break from it all. I think it really hurt me deeply that I didn't want to be in that position again with classmates. I didn't know back then that college was different than high school. So I elected to back away from attending college.
So the trade school, what did you study in the trade school?
I am a licensed manicurist, and I have been for, I think this year is 21 years that I've been licensed. Wow. I haven't practiced the entire time, but I've been a licensed manicurist for 20 years.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
It's so awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that whole nail art stuff. It's amazing,
Yeah.
So then, okay, so let's say after trade school, now you're starting your adult life free from all the, collegiate and schooling and all that stuff. Tell me where you were at that point in your life. Were you finding liberation? Were you still?
No. Which is just crazy. What? So my older sister, Katie, she went to aesthetic school. So she's an esthetician. It's so funny. My mom is not the type that does her hair and makeup every day. She'll occasionally wear nail polish. She's like, I don't know how my daughters are in the salon and beauty industry, but here we were. My sister ended up purchasing a salon on the north side of Chicago. And I worked for her. And it's funny? I still had to answer the same exact question with my clients. Because my sister and I, we sound identical. We have the same laugh. We have similar smile. But side by side, we really don't look alike. So when clients would kind of discover that we were siblings, there I go again, having to answer the same questions. So no, I didn't get away from it. And it's funny now that I'm even talking to you about this and my reason for not wanting to go to college. And here I was back in the same exact position in a professional atmosphere.
Right. Yeah. Well, then then how about, because you've been to Hawaii, so I'm thinking maybe you moved to Hawaii after all this. What made you go to Hawaii? I want to know that.
I actually left Chicago and moved to Washington State, where I currently live.
Okay.
And it's really interesting. I didn't know where I wanted to go or move. I didn't know when, but I knew I needed to get away. I hated the winters. I blamed it on the weather. And I had a client who is from the area and was moving back. So she's like, hey, join me. So 2 months later, sight unseen, I moved to a small town in Washington State. And it was kind of a rough landing. I didn't have enough money saved. You're young, you're in your 20s. I did everything I could. I moved to a small community and I knew one person, and it really felt pretty lonely. But in those moments, you learn a lot about yourself. And that was the first time that I acknowledged how truly loved I am.
Okay.
I reconnected with my biological father a little bit. Just being away from your family and then only having a phone, you realize how many people you talk to and how much family you have. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 2 dads, and I have 3 dads. I have 2 moms who absolutely love me. Why did I want to get away? It was kind of one of those lows where you realize what you truly are blessed with. So honestly, underlying, I think it really was to get away from those family dynamics, though. And I didn't even acknowledge it until recently, to be honest with you. But it was from, I was in Washington for 3 years, and then I had an opportunity to move to Maui. I mean, of course, why wouldn't I take that?
That was cool. Yes.
Yes. So it was kind of similar situation. I moved out there with a friend, and she moved out a couple of months prior and found her boyfriend and left 4 weeks after I moved there.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, oh, cool. This is great. I'm literally alone on an island. But in that moment was when I really woke up and I said, hey, I'm alone on an island. I can be whoever I want to be. I can do whatever I want to do. It is not easy. It's uncomfortable. And I grew so much. I learned so much about myself in that experience.
So I would think, so let me ask you this thing, because Hawaii is probably the most diverse state in the whole continental, out of the whole country. Was it easier for you there being a mixed race individual in a community that's known as, the whole state is known as mixed race people, or no?
Yes and no. And it really, a couple of things about Hawaii that a lot of people don't know when they go there to vacation is it actually is, I don't want to speak for the entire island, but it's not unknown. It is a very racist place, actually, but it's racist against white people.
Howleys, yes.
So not being local, I did blend in by my looks, but I didn't speak pidgin, so I didn't speak their kind of slang dialect. So I was cool until I started talking. And it blew my cover. I never firsthand got any backlash from the locals, but I was in one kind of precarious position one time at a bar with my now ex-husband. They almost beat him up because they thought I was local. So it was very interesting. I really am very grateful for that experience. They opened my eyes to, honestly, to racism. Yeah. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. It matters where you are. And you have to learn the history about the places that you're going, because I understand and I have mad respect for those islands, that culture, that everything. And I think that my experiences were definitely pretty unique because they blended in so well.
And then when did you leave Hawaii to come back to the mainland?
I was there from 2008 to 2011. Okay. And then I came back to Washington State.
Now, was that when you reunited with your siblings or not yet?
No, not yet.
Okay. So then what happened when you returned back to Washington?
Oh, my now ex-husband and I got married, started a family, bought a house, did the things, and then went through a divorce. So I think it was a year before my divorce was when my biological father passed away. Okay. I received a message from my half-brother, Nate, saying our dad's not doing well. He's in Texas. I just wanted to let you know, do what you will with this information. And I flew down. And that was, okay, I'm just going to be completely transparent with you.
Okay, absolutely.
It was really strange for me because it brought up a lot of interesting family dynamics for me. I had a lot of concern for my other siblings, my mom's daughter, my adopted dad. He has 2 other girls who are my sisters, but I've never had a conversation with them about the fact that I'm not totally blood related to them. I mean, they know, they have to know. So in my head, I'm like, okay, so I'm flying down to Texas. What happens if I'm tagged on Facebook in photos of these people claiming to be my sisters or my cousins, and then my little sisters have no idea. It was a really weird feeling, where every emotion that I had bottled up in my childhood, and just, the elephant in the room was starting to show. So I flew down to Texas, and a family member who I'd never met before made hotel arrangements. She picked me up. I was very much outside of my comfort zone. I have to tell you, I don't know this side of my family at all. And I was kind of out of it. I took a red-eye flight. At this point, I have twins, and they weren't even 2 years old. So, I mean, in the thick of being a mom, and like just sleep deprived and everything, and just felt upside down and out of my element. And I gave myself a deadline. I'm like, Rachel, when you get in the hotel room, you have to call your little sisters, and you have to tell them the truth. You have to ask them the truth. You have to call these people that you're afraid to tell that you are not blood related to them. So I had that in my chest, and it was a lot of pressure. And, going there, being with this family that I'd never known, they were so unbelievably welcoming and loving, and just so happy to see me. And I was out of my element fully. I never once felt uncomfortable around them, which is wonderful, but I needed to get a grip. So I went out to brunch, met family members that I'd never met before. They dropped me off at my hotel room. I gave myself 10 minutes to decompress, and then I called my little sisters individually, and I had that conversation with them. I said, okay, do you know that I'm not really your sister? And they're like, yeah. Both of them. They're like, duh.
Right.
I'm like, oh, how long have you been holding on to this? And they were like, I was 15, Rachel. Like,
yeah,
we didn't make a big deal of it because it's not a big deal. You're always going to be our sister. And I'm like, oh, okay. I can let this go now.
Yes.
Which was kind of silly, but I have to be patient and gracious with myself. I had nobody to talk to about this growing up, so I did my best, but I never wanted to make anybody angry or make anybody feel bad. Or honestly, I have a lot of abandonment issues, fear of abandonment. Not surprising. But I've worked through them in therapy. But the next part of saying goodbye to my father was the hardest, because I had to see a man that I hadn't seen since I was 21 years old. And I went to the hospice center, and I walked in the room. He was not fully coherent, but he was, and he could tell I was there. And I held his hand, and he squeezed my hand, and he tried his hardest to talk. And it was hard. I am so unbelievably grateful that I had this opportunity to say goodbye to him. And I knew that my half siblings were going to be coming down also. I just didn't know when. My brother Nate said that he wasn't going to. So Chris, my sister Chris, she arrived a couple of hours later, and to be honest with you, there was something about her that made me a little bit nervous.
Okay.
Her energy to me kind of was, she was the matriarch.
Okay.
I'm like, I must respect her. And I love her to pieces. I adore her. We had spent time together. I think the last time she and I hung out, I was maybe 12 or 13 years old. We FaceTimed a couple of times, but we never had an opportunity to connect. And she arrived. I was really quiet. Family members were there. Then they left. And then it was just she and I and our dad. And she sat by the window. And she sat me down, and she said, Rachel, can I talk to you? You're up. Here it comes. What is going to be unloaded on me? And she looked at me, and she said, Rachel, my entire life, I've always wanted a sister. I got 2 brothers. I would trade them in a heartbeat. But I knew that you were around, and I hoped and I prayed that as we would get older, we would connect and we would have this beautiful relationship, and it never happened, and it broke my heart. So can we start now? And I just lost it. I'm about to lose it.
That's a beautiful thing she said.
It truly is. And then a couple of hours later, our brother Nate showed up, and I was not expecting to see him. Mm-hmm. And it was wild. It was like we picked up where we last saw each other. Nothing had changed. We spent, I think, probably 16 hours together. And we were just driving around Texas, going to aunt's house, going out to lunch, like just giggling, laughing, talking about old stories, like the last time we saw each other. It was beautiful.
Yes.
It was amazing.
Absolutely. So it sounded like that bond you had was quickly built, like in a matter of a day.
Yes.
That is magical. That was all meant to be, honey.
Yes.
That's a beautiful thing. So now you guys are back together. Now I want to know, how did the evolution of the mixed movement come from this reunion? How did it develop and everything? I want to know that story, honey.
So every morning we have a group text between the 3 of us. And we haven't skipped a single day once in we're approaching 5 years. We're really close. We FaceTime once a month. Life has been hectic lately, so it's a little bit less frequently. But every single time we're like, we should start a podcast. This is hilarious. These connections are great. Like, I feel bad for people for missing out on these conversations.
Right.
So that little nugget, that little seed was planted a while ago. And then in 2021, I experienced a major shift in my life. I simultaneously, my house had flooded. I had already been divorced, but I dated somebody for about 1.5 years, and that relationship ended very badly. My house being flooded, my ex-husband had ownership of my home, so I essentially became homeless. Mm-hmm. And I had to go through the process of obtaining a restraining order against my ex-boyfriend, all at once. And I was seeing a therapist who's phenomenal, and he told me I think it was about month 3 of this process, he said, I need you, I highly recommend that you stop. Do me a favor, I'm going to give you homework. Stop for just a week, because every single time you keep grasping to, to hang on to or fix or repair some part of your life right now, you're getting pulled down deeper. You said in life, we are taught that we have peaks and we have valleys, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And when we're in a valley, we need to get to a peak. He said, no, sit in this valley, because no matter what you do right now, this valley is a part of you, and it's best for you to face it now than later. And I did not want to. I'm like, how long? He said 1 week. I'm like, okay, I do 1 week of just letting the dust settle. And in that week, I was like, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? I had a photography business. I'm now a single mother. I have 3 kids. Is this what I want to do? Mm-hmm. And I said, no. Nope. I've wondered my whole life why I was born into the situation that I was born into. Mm. We all have these why me moments. And I knew, and I've always known, I think I was 4th grade, I remember staring at the wall. I'm like, I have a voice and I'm meant to use it. And I just, of course, life happened and I forgot about it. And it came back to the surface. And I'm like, nope, I'm going to start a podcast, because I know how I felt growing up. I felt really isolated. I felt weird. I felt, being asked all these questions that I was asked, it made me feel like a science experiment. I know that I'm not alone.
Yes.
The best, fastest, most broad way to do this is to start a podcast. Mm-hmm. And so I called Nate and Chris individually, and I was like, hey, you in? And they're like, hell yeah. So that's the long story, but that's how the podcast was, the idea was born.
Absolutely. So now you guys are with this pod. So what's very interesting about me, you know, and your podcast is it's just me, but your podcast has two other people, which can complicate things. So let's say there's somebody out there like you, a baby Rachel, saying, I want to do what she does with my siblings. What advice would you give somebody like that if you're going to do it with multiple hosts on a show? Because I think most podcasters would like to know, how do you balance everything? How do you balance creative differences? Are there arguments on air or anything? What's the best advice you can give based on your experiences with this?
Be flexible. That's it. To be flexible. My podcast is actually, it's a hybrid, and it's not always us together. Okay. I do, we have interviewed guests. When we have a guest, it's just me. I think Chris has had one interview. It's a hybrid. There wasn't really any like firm structure. These were things that we discussed. Honestly, be flexible and be very clear and be very transparent when you're thinking about creating a podcast with a co-host. For us, we all discussed prior to launching what everybody's roles were, how, you know, the workload, how the podcast and the business would be split, that sort of thing. So, and you know what? I feel like with anything you do, expect mistakes, but don't label them as mistakes. They're lessons. Yes. With every mistake, there's something to learn. Exactly. So is the Mixed Movement podcast, does it look like how I envisioned? No. No, not at all. It's honestly, it's better. Okay. It's better because we've been flexible. It has been really challenging trying to record an episode with all three of us with everybody's schedules. I don't know how, but we managed to make it work. Sometimes somebody's sitting in their car waiting for their child to get out of practice, or, you know, we just make it happen. And being flexible is honestly, it's
the number one
saving grace.
Yes, that's key to success. Absolutely. Yeah. So are there any episodes you guys did that really stood out in your mind?
Yeah. Like, how do I pick one?
Take a couple.
So one of our most popular episodes in 2022 was we spoke about relationships and dating.
Okay.
And being mixed race. And that was because when we do our episodes, we talk about our own experiences. Mm-hmm. We don't collectively try to talk about, you know, the topic. And also, side note, Christine is 10 years older than Nate and I. Nate and I are 4 months apart to the date, which is hilarious. Mm-hmm. And we were raised in different neighborhoods, all within, 10 miles of one another. So our stories, our upbringings were very different, even though we're related. Mm-hmm. So we kind of want to feed into that. And because, we're siblings, but we're not at all the same. We have not lived the same experience. So relationships and dating has been one of my favorites. We have recently spoke, I think the title is season 2, The Summer of Self-Love, where we really discovered a lot about ourselves and being mixed race and the nuances and just life.
Yes.
So those are my top 2 favorites that of just the three of us. Mm-hmm. But as far as interviews, season 1, I think it's episode 6 with Sophia Samara is one of my favorites. She's phenomenal. She's Italian and Palestinian, and she's effervescent. She's beautiful. She's bubbly, and she fully embodies and embraces being mixed race. I've learned so much from her.
Yes.
So that is one of my favorite episodes of an interview. And then my other season 2 with Bob Parrish. He is a longtime friend. I've known him for about 17 or 18 years, and we speak. He's white, monoracial, but he's a huge advocate for the Black community. And we speak about actually his faith, which is something that's relatively taboo for me. Mm-hmm. But he speaks about the Baha'i faith and the reason why this faith is, I guess, important for mixed race people to acknowledge and maybe explore if you would like to, is that it is all encompassing. If you're Christian, stay Christian. If you're Muslim, stay Muslim. It's all fine. It's kind of an umbrella faith, but they encourage the mixing and blending of cultures. They encourage interracial marriage. And it gave me goosebumps. He sent me a ton of videos. I'm like, oh my gosh, you need to be on my podcast. Or as a mixed race person in the United States where we feel like we have to choose, knowing that there's this whole community globally, this whole faith that encourages us to be it's comforting. So that's another one of my favorites.
Maybe we all should join that religion. Maybe that's the most accepting of us. You know what I mean?
It really is. I mean, and the fact that they encourage you to keep your faith that you already have, just add this on as an all-encompassing community building, all love. Yes, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm. So what's next for the mixed movement? What do you guys have in the works?
Right now, we're kind of in a transition. I am trying my best to figure out how to include and incorporate video, which is going to be a little tricky. But that is really the next biggest step, is just elevating the podcast and the production.
So let the listeners know, because hey, you guys, you got another podcast you can listen to besides mine. When does the mixed movement? How often do you have your episodes? What day does it come out? Let the listeners know.
It comes out on Fridays, twice a month. Right now, hopefully, we'll be able to increase that soon. But we are at a pause right now while we're figuring out all the logistics of this upgrade. So I do believe our last episode was in December of 2023. So we're on pause right now, hoping to relaunch the podcast relatively soon.
Mm-hmm. That sounds exciting, girl. So then, since you're kind of in a hiatus, then we're going to also talk about, I found you online with the breast cancer. It's called Fab Over 40 with that whole thing. And we talked about you being second place. You're like, no, it has nothing. But you still were showcased with that. Now, I want to know why you decided to do that. Is there a personal story behind you doing that for breast cancer?
I was influenced by actually a high school friend. She had done it the year prior, and just watching her and her posts and her confidence went through the roof, and it was intense for her, but she did a fabulous job. And then learning that it was a huge fundraiser for breast cancer also was encouraging. It was terrifying, to be honest with you, because it's it's kind of like a popularity contest and self-promotion, and that's very, very, very much outside of my comfort zone, but it's for such an incredible cause. So I put myself in the contest this year. I did go fairly far, but I did not win, but I don't care. I don't know how much I raised, but I know that I raised a significant amount for breast cancer research this year.
I love that. Yeah, it's more about the experience a lot of times than winning. You know what I mean? And to highlight, a worthy cause that people should donate to and support, because so many women, even men, get it too, die from this every year.
Yep. And I have a complicated family dynamic, which I'm sure everybody at this point knows. I have 3 moms: my biological mom, my stepmom, and where I live now, there's a woman who has essentially adopted me, and I call her mom. And all 3 have battled and won their fight with breast cancer. So it's important to me.
Absolutely. Close to your heart. Literally close to your heart. That's right. Now, in one of them photos, girl, you were just gorgeous. You had this amazing thigh tattoo.
Oh, yes.
What about that? That looks so pretty.
Thank you. So my thigh tattoo was a 40th birthday present to myself. And it's interesting. It was started right before my house flooded, and it still isn't. I have a little tiny bit that needs to be finished, but it says she has the heart of a queen and the mindset of a warrior. She is everything all at once and too much for anyone who doesn't deserve her. She is you.
I love that. Right on, girl.
Thank you. And it has lotus flowers in it. And I actually thought I started writing a book about a memoir about my life, and I was going to title it The Life of a Lotus. The significance, which a lot of people are aware, but if you aren't, a lotus flower is grown in really mucky, gross, muddy water. And it is the most incredibly stunning flower. And it opens during the day and closes at night. And it's so very symbolic to me about my life, because, I mean, I was the result of an affair, and I'm blooming. I'm still continuing to bloom and grow and thrive, even amidst my family dynamics and my house flooding and all of these things. A lotus is really symbolic for me personally.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, you're resilient, girl. You're the test of resilience. That's exactly what it is. So you're also, I forgot that you're not a life coach. What is your title?
I am a personal development coach. I do work with members within the mixed race community to help uncover their own personal identity, because that is definitely something that a lot of us struggle with. That's my main focus, but I have also helped several clients move, which I found that wasn't my plan in my career. But a lot of mixed race people are living in an environment that is just not safe, nor is it comfortable. So I have helped a couple of clients devise a plan and move forward in getting themselves out of that position, which it was just kind of an icing on the cake. So yes, I work with people directly to really learn how to fully embrace all that you are, because we are all really beautiful. We have so many strengths. The world sometimes makes us feel like we don't fit in, but we do. So it's just about uncovering our own unique blend.
Absolutely. And embracing our beauty that's within and outside of ourselves. I totally agree with that. So that reminds, you're basically, counseling, helping mixed race people find their identity, their strength, their light. But I don't know if it was someone in your family that, or someone who told you about traveling while mixed, and I didn't even know that was a thing. But I want you to elaborate a little bit on that, because I don't even think of something like that. So
yeah, that was actually Chris and I recorded an episode of our podcast about it. It was after a trip to Mexico that I had been on, and my friend that I went with, he's Mexican. He's from Mexico City, and we were in central Mexico. And it was just kind of funny. I knew it. I knew I had an awareness of living in Hawaii and being mixed race that I blended in. And I kind of went into Mexico feeling the same way. I mean, where I live, people walk up to me speaking Spanish all the time, but I knew being in Mexico, I was definitely going to get mistaken for a local. And it happened. It happened a lot. I don't speak Spanish. I really wish I did. But it was kind of funny because it was really beneficial when we would go to the markets and we'd go shopping, and I would look for shoes, and I'd, pick up a pair of shoes, and the person would come over and speak Spanish to me and ask me what size I needed. And I just hold up my shoes and look at him, and he would communicate. And it was funny because after a while he said, "It's funny, you're doing great not talking at all, because they're giving you the discount because they think that you're Mexican until you start speaking. So just keep not talking. Continue looking for me."
Yeah. Wow. That's
so that brought up a lot of, I guess, a different perspective and a lot of questions for me. going to other countries where there are a lot of, I picked up the term, it might offend people, but brown-skinned countries where brown-skinned people are, the majority,
Yes.
going to those countries being mixed race, we blend in everywhere. So I feel like we have a lot more authentic experiences because we're not sticking out like a sore thumb as a tourist. And also in that episode that Christine and I recorded about traveling, she talks about her going to Nigeria, and she's very light-skinned mixed. And it's really, her experiences are pretty interesting. Definitely not what I anticipated. So it's just, to go and travel with that lens on is pretty kind of cool. I feel like it's a major benefit of being mixed.
Yeah, and in each continent, you'll get a different reaction, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because when I went to Europe a couple of years ago, nothing like, nobody, what are you? Nothing. I was just part of the hoi polloi of tourists. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't have anything like that. That's really, but that depends on how the trip is and what you're doing and where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't have to, but that's Europe. So, and there's a lot of mixed race people in Paris where I went, in London where I went, Amsterdam, not so much, but everybody's too busy getting stoned. So nobody's really
nobody's paying attention.
Yeah, they're just chill type of people. So that's really interesting. Yeah, because I would like to go to other like I want to go to Puerto Rico. I know they're gonna speak to me Spanish there.
Yes.
Well, hablas español. No, but yeah, I'm gonna have to be mindful of that when I visit places like that. Even the Bahamas. There's multi-generational mixed people there. It's like, how will it be there? Will I just fit right on in? But once I open my mouth, they know, you're an American. Or how will they react to me? So that's something I think we all need to look at as mixed race people when we travel internationally. Where to go, what to do, because it's almost like we may need our own green book. Remember the green book? It's a little book that was published back in the day for Black folks to tell you where it was to stay in all the states, where to eat, where to shop, where to go to a hotel that were safe. And whatever wasn't in there, you didn't go to anything except what was in that green book. And it makes me wonder, maybe we should do a little something like that.
That's actually a really good idea.
Yeah, places that are accepting the mixed race people where you're not being stared at or whatever, feeling uncomfortable. Who knows? We could do something like that. That'd be pretty.
That would be incredible. Or just share.
A collaborative effort, though, from everybody.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's the thing. So that might be something in the works.
Yeah. I love that. I love that idea.
So I think what it is, what we do too, like just with this conversation we had, it's like we know our purpose. We know what we want to do to make an impact on the world. And then we're even speaking on something that can make it even a greater impact for some people. But tied into this is our why. So I want to know what your why is. What is your why?
Whew. Well, my why is, I think I mentioned it in the beginning. The more I've researched, especially in coaching, the more I've learned how absolutely imperative community is. We cannot survive in isolation. And my why for using my voice finally and speaking up and using these platforms is to create community within the mixed race community where we don't feel isolated. We don't feel weird. We can talk about our experiences and not feel judged or shamed. And truthfully, we need one another. And it really doesn't matter if you're mixed or if you're monoracial. If you can find connection and community, it could very well save your life. So my purpose, my why is to help people feel less isolated. I don't want anybody to feel like how I did growing up.
Absolutely. I'm the same way. It's like if I just help that one person out in the middle, and like we were discussing earlier about how in my stats, I found one person in Russia listening to me.
Yeah.
Happiness and comfort to that person in Russia for that period of time. And then tell us about where you found somebody.
I have listeners in the U.S., UK, which I'm so very grateful for. But I was really surprised to learn I have a couple listeners in Italy and also in Tanzania.
See?
Like, it's crazy. I goosebumps every time I say that.
Yes. Because that means we're making a worldwide impact. It's across the globe, somebody needs to hear what we're telling them. And that's my why. I just want, even if one person, I'm not trying to change the whole world, change one person's mind, who may be thinking about interracial romance or dating or kids or whatever, or somebody who's mixed race like us that are going through the ropes. So they just want to hear somebody who's been through stuff and get that consolation, that comfort, Yeah.
And I encourage people that want to be advocates for mixed race people to listen to all of these podcasts.
Yes.
I feel like also with that, maybe there will be a deeper form of understanding about the questions that were asked by monoracial people about our anatomy and physiology, that maybe they won't ask us directly anymore, and we'll do away with it or come up with a narrative on how to approach people about when you have questions about their mix. Right. So I think that you are doing a fantastic job. I love your why. Thank you for doing all that you are doing. I appreciate you so much.
Yes, you too, because we're all a vital piece and a part of changing the world, especially when it comes to mixed race people, Yes. Especially since the census. I love quoting the census, how in 2020, mixed people declare themselves mixed race, a 260% increase. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's only going to keep going. The momentum's going to get bigger and bigger. We're just starting the momentum. We're starting to keep rolling. It's going to get bigger and bigger. And we're just the trailblazers. We're laying it out.
Absolutely. I love it.
Yes. Exactly. So now let's give you a final question, honey, because I always ask my guests this, and I remember wording it very differently than what I do. So what my last question is what advice, not my last question, because I still have to ask about your social media, but let's ask this one first. What advice or tools would you ask the next generation of mixed race advocates and individuals to solidify community acceptance and national recognition? Where do we go from here? What do we do?
Speak up.
Yes.
Speak up. And also, actually, number one, establish your boundaries and do not feel bad for that.
Yes.
I think a lot of us have been taught that it's okay. They're just being nice. No. Establish your boundaries about what you are okay with and what you are not. And do not apologize for that.
Yes.
That I highly encourage. Just be proud. Be proud of your mix. We are all so beautifully perfect. We are the perfect blend in every way. Do not shy away or let anybody make you feel less than or not enough of. You are here for a reason, and you are perfect exactly the way you are. Do not be embarrassed of that. So just establish your boundaries, stand true to who you are, and speak up. Absolutely. If you feel like something isn't right, or if you don't like the way that somebody is calling upon you or whatever, just no, don't be so passive. A lot of us, historically speaking, have been taught to be passive.
Yes.
And it's that only leads to isolation and confusion.
Absolutely. Well, my darling, Rachel, thank you so much for coming on. I enjoyed it. Hopefully I'll be on yours one day. We'll see how.
I would love to have
you already got a guest that's lined up for the next season or whenever you could kind of squeeze me in, that thing. I want to thank you so much for being here, my darling. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And my darling, one last thing. I am so mad. Let's rewind that.
Right.
No. What are your social medias, girl? We got to know what folks can follow you. No, yes. I ain't done. Nope. Tell the world what it is.
You can find me I'm pretty heavy on Instagram. I have Mixed Movements, and that's MIXD.movement. I also post a lot about my coaching on Polished Velvet, and that's polished.velvet. And then you can also find me on Facebook as well. at Mixed Movement.
Right on, honey. All right. So, my darlings, we are wrapping up this fabuloso episode. I want you to like, rate, subscribe, share this episode with friends. I am on Spreaker. I say Spreaker first because actually, if you see me on Spreaker, there's a YouTube audio you can actually listen to rather than just my audio. We're learning, we're upgrading. You can listen to me on Apple, Spotify, iHeart. Follow me on Instagram. I'm finally back in the swing of things, my darlings. I am posting regularly now. Generation Mix Podcast. I don't do TikTok anymore. I don't have Facebook. You just find me on Instagram. Okay, my darlings? And if any of y'all would like to be on the show, you can always call or text 510-852-9550, or you can email generationmixpodcast@gmail.com. So, I'm also partnered with New Wave Community Media, which is a brand new nonprofit that actually promotes digital literacy, promotes responsibility online, that actually gives you tools on cyberbullying, how to basically eradicate it, how to make yourself feel good about yourself, just positive things for social media, no negative. So, my darlings, that concludes another episode and another story on what it means to be multiracial in America, one story at a time, from the studio to the streets. Good night, my darlings.